So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present here at this symposium. My presentation is trying to give a brief summary and overview of a few tools that we use to manage information exchange and coordination in the first phase of major natural disasters. Here's my coordinates, and my email address is marked here. I will put the presentation into the chat after the presentation, so you can all download it if you want. The first one is disaster information management. The first critical issue is in a natural sudden onset disasters that speed and time is critical for saving lives. If you can imagine an earthquake that occurs very rapidly without previous notice or previous information that can be detected, the search and rescue teams that come to assist in the affected country have to sometimes travel across the globe to get there. So a decision to ask for international assistance has to be quick. They have to be ready to deploy quickly. They have to be transported to the affected area quickly, and this all in a window of 48 hours, ideally, maybe 3 days altogether, because that's how long victims can survive under the rubble in ideal conditions, we can say. So we have to analyze what information is needed to start with. I have listed a few of the most important ones here. We have to understand the disaster impact. Is it a big thing? Is it a small thing? What has happened? And this is immediately after we get notified about a new emergency, particularly when it is a sudden onset disaster like an earthquake. Probably the worst case scenario is an earthquake because it comes very rapidly and hits with full impact. A storm approaches more slowly, and we can prepare a little bit because we know when it is anticipated to make landfall. A volcano also takes some time until it erupts. It doesn't explode without previous indications. And floods and disasters like this also give us a little head start. We have to then understand which are the areas of interest for satellite images, because we instantly activate certain satellite tools to collect images post-disaster, and we have to know where to send the satellites. And this is very difficult and challenging to identify the areas of interest, because for a high resolution image, the area is fairly small compared to a large scale disaster, which can cover, for example, like the 99 earthquake in Turkey was 40 square kilometers. 40,000 square kilometers. That's a big area that was covered by the earthquake. So you have to be quick for that. Then there's the big question, is there a need and a request for international assistance? Then we have to understand what are the priority needs, what can the country affected cover, and what do they need from the external, from international community. We have to understand the entry points, the airports, are they open? How far away are they from the affected area? We have to understand the customs and immigration measures when the teams deploy with their equipment, with their medicine, etc. We have to understand how quickly can this be processed through the customs. Recently, we also have to bother about the COVID regulations for relief teams when they deploy. And we have to understand what is the coordination setup of international actors in the country. The affected country is in charge for the coordination, and more these countries get prepared. The disaster-prone countries get prepared and better acquainted to organize international assistance. But very often they need a little bit support from international organizations or regional organizations to do that. And then we have to understand the logistic support in country. How do the teams come from the airport to the affected area, get the fuel and transport and what they need. There are a few other, once we know more or less what information is needed, we have to understand what decisions have to be taken. We have to, everybody who is engaged has to consider a communication strategy. We have to know what do we inform the public or our supervisors or our staff. And this is what we have to come to terms very quickly. We have to consider, is there a life-saving effort which would increase the speed required to mobilize the resources? What are possible secondary risks that you run into if you fly into a hurricane scenario and suddenly you find out the airports are affected and you cannot land and you have to go deviate to another place? What is critical infrastructure affected? What are the priority needs? What resources need to be mobilized? This is a very important question because the response from the international community should be needs-driven and not resource-driven. And we have been working for decades now, very successfully, I would say, to sensitize international responders that they first wait, understand what is needed, as opposed to just mobilize what they think is needed. And that is important. Then we have to understand the coordination setup in their country and any policies that apply. For example, if the disaster causes a nuclear accident in a nuclear plant, then some policies about the International Atomic Organization would be applied. And then different actors and different procedures would come into play. And we have to understand the security and safety of those teams deployed. And then what are the information sources? We have baseline data that we can access before we understand the resilience of a country. We know what did they do in previous disasters. So we have a little bit of institutional memory. Very early in the phase after disaster, we have to use modeling and remote sensing, like satellite images or computer programs that calculate possible impact to get an idea what the impact might be. And then we use crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing can be media, social media, but also when I ask our team in the field what they know about it, they will telephone around and ask someone, but they have not seen it with their own eyes. They just send us a report or give us a briefing on the telephone. So that's all in the domain of crowdsourcing. It is, depending on the source of the one who provides the information, it is very accurate and reliable. Sometimes it is not so accurate and not reliable. So we have to, this has to be treated with caution. And of course, the most effective is expert assessment. So usually we have to wait for the affected country to mobilize their assessment teams or get first-hand information from the affected area that we know what the scenario is. So we should not, this is a very complex issue that I'm describing here. And most importantly, it has to involve a context analysis. It is not just that they take facts that we hear from some source and jump at conclusions what needs to be done. We have to analyze the context. This step is very often omitted and leads to wrong decisions in wrong deployments, too much of the wrong thing and not enough of the other thing. So first thing, the modeling and remote sensing in the first phase, automatic disaster impact estimations. We have a tool that is called Global Disaster Alert and Coordination System, and it is designed to provide real-time disaster alerts and a platform for initial coordination. The website is www.gdocs.org, and it does real-time disaster alerts, real-time impact estimations, which uses algorithms using data from different sources to come up with a possible impact. It was jointly developed by the European Commission, OCHA, and UNOSAT. It sends everybody, it's free of charge. Everybody can subscribe to email and SMS alerts to receive these alerts. And the automatic impact estimation is published on the website. And it supports two coordination platforms that are integrated. One is the Virtual Operations Center, Virtual OSSOC we call it. And the other one is the Satellite Mapping Coordination System managed by UNOSAT. So on the homepage, you see the map with recent disasters, and they use color codes to describe the significance. If you click on one of these disasters, you would get something like this with more information, a summary of the event, automatic analysis of media and social media reports, resources where you can access the first data sources that were used to calculate, and maps and satellite images that have been developed. Some of them automatically. For example, after an earthquake, you have automatic calculations of a tsunami if this is an issue, and you can see it here. The color scale indicates the significance. The tool supports a multi-hazard reporting: earthquakes, tsunamis, tropical storms, floods, forest fires, and droughts. And these modules are constantly improved because the sensor systems, the satellite images, and the other data sources become more sophisticated, and the algorithms deriving the impact analysis are constantly being revised and improved based on user experience and on comparing the models with the reality. The data comes from seismological institutions, satellites, sensors, country databases that indicate population densities, resilience, and other things, and of course, social media. The color code is important to understand because that's a very often a misunderstanding. The color code does not indicate the significance and the magnitude of the event, but the likelihood of a need for international assistance. And that is what the system was designed for. That we, as international community, when we consider mobilizing assistance, we know, is it worth considering? If it's a green alert, it is most unlikely that the country will ask for help. Even if the disaster was severe, if it's a strong earthquake in Japan, it might create a green alert. The same disaster in Haiti would create a red alert because the resilience is different. The country has a different coping capacity. Orange is in the middle. That means there might be selected requests for assistance from the country. And red, we can assume that it was really overwhelming the capacity of the country and they would need international help. So here again, that's what the color codes look like. And you see that they have improved this also, that here it's 2.5 in the red. That's in the middle of the red scale. And an orange alert, for example, or a red alert could be at the top of the red scale or at the bottom of the red scale, and this is important for the analysis and for those who read the data. And we have to always understand that this is automatically calculated data and it is not guarantee for anything. There's an ambiguity. There might be, there is a need to verify the data and to take the telephone and to contact focal points in other countries or in the affected country or in the region. So here comes where the international coordination tools come into play. The first one is the virtual operations center. The address is here. You can create an account on that site. You get immediate access with a user account. And you see that we have a list of the disasters that are currently ongoing. And information that has been added recently changes the color of the respective disaster. We have some 60,000 subscribers, most of them disaster managers in member states, response teams, United Nations agencies, NGOs, academia, and regional national crisis centers. The important thing is that the tool supports structured information exchange. It's not just a blog. It has a blog in different categories like situation updates, what is the status of request for systems, customs, logistics, and many other titles where the information can be input already in a structured manner to make it easier to use, to read, and to enter the data. And then it serves coordination, for example, to alert rapid response teams. We in the United Nations have an UNTAC team, which is the United Nations Disaster Assessment Coordination Team, but there are many other teams that use the same platform to alert their rapid response teams. The international relief teams can register their teams there so that the affected country knows what is coming in or what is considering to come in. And it supports field coordination once the international teams have arrived in the site, and they can create sectors in which they, or aerial sectors or regions in which they coordinate in different parts of the affected area. If you click on one of the discussions, I used the Tonga tsunami, which is a very recent emergency caused by an underwater volcanic eruption. You open the structure of the disaster. I'm sorry, I have to go back. And you see here at the left side, you see the structure that we have developed over years until we got it right, that it really serves the purpose of those who need the information. And we have everything more or less under control, and the structure doesn't change. It's always there. And when it is grayed out, then there's no information in it. And we don't oblige everybody to fill out everything all the time. And different people, different users populate or enter data in different areas. They can attach attachments, and everybody is free to provide comments, to provide additional information. And then we have in each of these titles a moderator who would coordinate the and update the disaster with the most relevant information. So it is not a blog that becomes more and more full of information, but there's actually someone in each of the titles to summarize and condense it to keep it up to date. And as Kenny said in the previous presentation, a tool and data is not everything. At one point, you have human interaction because many of the humanitarian workers, they still have, they don't rely on automatic tools. They need to articulate, to assess, to write, to read, and to use the information and to manage the information in the conventional way. Here's a screenshot of the teams that have registered in this particular disaster. And this is only a few on top of the list. You see that the status of these teams here is all they are monitoring, because there was so far no request from Tonga that they actually are supposed to deploy. But once the request comes in, they would put themselves on standby and eventually deploy, change the status here, and also indicate the capacity they come with. And some of them, like here, the Urban Search and Rescue teams, USA, they have a very sophisticated fact sheet they have to fill out that exactly indicates what they come with, including the dogs, the equipment, and also focal points of the team. The next coordination system we have is the satellite mapping coordination system. When there is a disaster, in the initial phase, it's very difficult to get the right satellite images, and there's a potential room for duplication. So this tool was developed by UNOSAT, is used by UNOSAT, Copernicus, and others. The Copernicus is the European Union Satellite Imaging Agency, and they would create what they call they coordinate the areas of interest, which is where the satellite would take the photos. And they have to make sure that they don't overlap too much, or that they know what they are doing, so that they don't all produce the same map for the same area. And that is the first important issue. And once this is done, they start working on it, and they produce, like we see in the bottom part of the screen here, a map and with the information that was requested. Very often, the information is requested by certain organizations or member states that what they want to see on the map. Very often also in the initial phase, it is up to the experience of previous disasters that the map producer would populate the information and sort of suggest what they think is most relevant. If you go to find this satellite mapping coordination system, you go to the GDAX homepage at gdax.org, and then you have this button here, and then anybody can make a request, can view the maps, and also go to the archive to see previous maps, that satellite images that were produced in previous disasters. So with this, I conclude my presentation. It was a short summary. In 25 minutes, there's not much more to go in depth, but at the Humanitarian Networks and Partnerships Week, which will be held from 2nd to 20th of May, you will have the opportunity to attend remote sessions where these issues are discussed and introduced in more depth. And you're always invited to use any of the two links here to sign up for the automatic alerts, to explore the tool, and to create an account for the coordination platform on the Virtual Operations Center, and participate in the disaster discussions there. I'm now available to answer any questions, and thank you very much.